I'm not
So
nude.
nobody's nude. There's nobody
I'm
nude
not
right now.
nude.
No, okay. The dog is not nude. Alright?
The officer's performance handled in Section 5-30 of the City of Myrtle Beach Code of Ordinances, which prohibits public nudity, and we will discuss this code in more detail later in the subject. Public nudity regulations are common in the United States, and almost every state has some sort of law involving nude behavior or indecent exposure. Public nudity is also often regulated even more strictly on the municipal level, as is the case in Myrtle Beach, and these local ordinances have generally survived constitutional scrutiny when challenged in court. In the 2000 case of Erie versus Taft AM, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld a public indecency ordinance in the city of Erie, Pennsylvania, that prohibited knowingly or intentionally appearing in public in a, quote, state of nudity. A nude erotic dancing establishment called Candyland challenged the constitutionality of the law, arguing that because the ordinance required the dancers to wear a certain amount of clothing, it violated their First Amendment right to freedom of expression. In reaching its decision, the court determined that while, quote, being in a state of nudity
What
is
are you
not
doing that for?
inherently expressive condition, nude dancing
That was
is expressive
unnecessary.
conduct that falls, quote, only
I probably
within
would.
the outer ambit of the First Amendment protection. Despite the First Amendment implications, the court upheld the ordinance as a content-neutral regulation that attempted to avoid the negative associated with nude dancing establishments, rather than restrict the speech. In other court cases, public nudity ordinances that prohibit women, but not men, from exposing their breasts have been challenged as a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. While the majority of courts considering these cases have upheld such law, in the 2019 case of Free Nipple Fort Collins versus City of Fort Collins, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a district court's determination that such an ordinance, quote, discriminates against women based on the generalized notion that, regardless of a woman's intent, the exposure of her breasts in public is necessarily a sexualized act. Thus, it perpetrates a stereotype ingrained in our society that female breasts are primarily objects of sexual desire, whereas male breasts are not. Based on this reasoning, the court concluded that there was a strong likelihood that the plaintiff could establish that ordinance violates the Equal Protection Clause. The U.S. Supreme Court has yet to weigh in on this issue, but on January 13, 2020, the court rejected a request to review the 2019 case of State versus Village, where the Supreme Court of New Hampshire upheld an ordinance banning women from appearing topless in public. As mentioned before, we will discuss the parameters of the Myrtle Beach Municipal Code in a moment, but it is important to note that the concept of public nudity is still a relatively controversial subject within the courtroom.
As long as it's not in a sexually explicit manner, there's nothing sexually explicit about this. Okay, in the nude, this is not considered nudity. There is clothing covering their private parts. Just because she hasn't seen